First book of Samuel, chapters 16 to 18 today, and this is the story of David and Goliath. I sort of thought I knew the story of David and Goliath, but it turns out, no, there was quite a bit missing from that. It starts anyway with God telling Samuel off because he's sort of moping about the failure of Saul, that it's just not been a successful king for the Israelites. And God says to Samuel to go and anoint someone else. Samuel seems pretty not keen on this because he thinks that Saul will kill him for it. So I'm not quite sure what he's moping for. He seems almost like he's moping for his friend not going very well, but he's worried his friend is going to kill him. Maybe I got that wrong, but either way, God seems to pretty much ignore this anyway and just tells him to go and find this chap called Jesse, and that of Jesse's sons, one of them God was going to choose to be anointed by Samuel. Samuel goes to see Jesse anyway, and he lays eyes on one of his sons, Eliab, I think it is, and decides that he's quite a magnificent specimen apparently, so he's surely going to be the one. But God says, no, people look at people's appearances, God looks at the heart. So it's just interesting. I mean, obviously that's metaphorical, it's not looking at the heart in your chest pumping away, or clearly, I assume. And it's not clear what about that heart that appeals to God. But interesting anyway, perhaps it's sort of obvious, but for some reason I thought that was interesting anyway. That's what God is looking at. He's not necessarily looking at whatever it is that appeals to him about these people he selects. Something in the heart there, and clearly all deeply flawed people. So it's not like they have to be perfect or anything. Just there's something in them that seems to be a positive for God. In a sort of fashion parade style-y, anyway, Jesse has 7 of his sons parade in front of Samuel, and each one's like, no, not the one, no, not the one. But it turns out he has an 8th son, the little one, David, who's out in the field doing stuff, and it sounds like he wasn't even worth bringing him into parade. But lo and behold, that's the one. So Samuel anoints him, and it says the Spirit of the Lord descends upon him. No immediate power-up or anything, but the Spirit of the Lord thing does sound very metaphorical half the time. And then it's the likes of Samson, it sounds a bit more like a power-up, so it's a bit confusing, but never mind. It talks about the Spirit of the Lord has left Saul, and that he's occasionally tormented by an evil/harmful spirit, depending on which translation you're looking at, and that spirit is tormenting him. But it also notes that this is sent by God, so it's saying that God is tormenting someone by sending an evil/harmful spirit, which, well, that's weird, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of a new thing. That's not in keeping with stuff we've had before. But anyway, long story short, David is sent for, and he plays his lyre thing, which is just like a small banjo sort of thing. And it says that when Saul is in one of his moods, I guess, when the evil spirit is upon him, David plays his lyre, and it seems to settle Saul down. I mean, it sounds more like Saul is just a grumpy bastard, doesn't it? So I don't quite know if we're reading into this that it's an actual possession exorcist style. Bit odd. David anyway goes into Saul's service as an armour bearer, which slightly confused me because I thought Samuel going to anoint him was going to make him king, but no, clearly David is going to the service of the king for now. In the meantime anyway, the Philistines are building up a great big army around about the way in a sort of threatening manner. And from this emerges what's said to be their champion, who is Goliath, as you may have guessed. And it's said that he's 6 cubits and a span tall, which translates to roughly about 9 feet, or just over 9 feet, I think, 9.5 feet or so. I gather there's a potential sort of translation issue with this. Either it's translation or it was an old manuscript that was difficult to copy or something. But there was a question mark, I think, over whether Goliath was 9 and a bit feet or 7 feet. Given the tallest man who's ever lived and been recorded was 8'11" and died quite young, I think, because of complications of being that tall, I think unlikely he's 9 foot tall. But that being said, I do know a chap who's 7 foot tall, and he is big enough you're not going to mess with him. So I think it still probably works if Goliath's 7 foot tall. You don't want to fight that. But anyway, Goliath comes out and he has this great idea. I mean, he's potentially arguably a bit of a humanitarian because he's saying, someone come out and fight me. Whoever wins, their side wins and the other side loses. And it's like, well, you can have that conflict decided without anyone else having to fight. That's a brilliant idea. It said, I think it said that Goliath makes this challenge for 40 days. The whole Philistine army's just sat there twiddling their thumbs and playing cards and reading books or something. And no one's taking up the challenge from the other side. So they're just sitting there determined not to have a war, apparently. Saul also says he will offer his daughter and relief from taxes forever for anyone who goes out there and kills Goliath. Given the tax thing, I'd be up for that. That sounds worth a go. Go and have a crack at his knees or something. But no one does it. David, anyway, has been going backwards and forwards, helping his dad with his flock and then coming back to the front line, as it were. So he doesn't hear the challenge from Goliath until quite late on. But as soon as he hears it, it sounds like he's armouring up. He's like, nah, God's on our side. This guy's an upstart. I'm just going to go and kill him. Apparently he's quite small, and Goliath's obviously not, however you look at it, however you measure it. So David goes out there with his sling with some stones, flings it, smacks Goliath in the head, then lops his head off. So that's the shortest fight ever. It's quite boring. Yet David and Goliath is so famous. I guess it's because it's a small guy beating a big guy, but the actual fight itself, not very exciting. The Philistines all run away anyway and have a panic because their big guy is gone. The Israelites chase after him and kill loads of them. So Goliath's plan, despite being sensible in theory, in practice didn't work and lots of people are killed. I don't quite get why they're having a panic, because I mean this is one little kid who goes out with a stone and hits Goliath in the head and kills him. Sure, great. But even if that wasn't a fluke and David is a proper crack shot at this sort of thing, how long does it take before someone can just get over there and shove a spear in him or a sword in him and it's done? But they panic and run away. So I don't know if Philistines are stupid or this story is embellished in some way perhaps, but never mind. We then have Jonathan, Saul's son, come along, and it all seems to be relaxed and groovy. There's no hint that Saul is still trying to kill him or anything, so that seems to have resolved itself. But it makes this odd comment that Jonathan loves David as himself. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then it said it again, so it's literally in there twice. It just clearly seemed to deliberately mean to say that Jonathan loves David as himself. I'm all for, I think people should love themselves, and sometimes that can mean being hard on yourself when you need to sort yourself out a bit, and sometimes it's about being a bit more soft on yourself. So I think generally loving oneself has got to be a good thing, but it's an odd way to express it, isn't it? And the first time we've come across that as well. So again, feeling a little bit inconsistent with some of the rest of the Bible, but never mind. The people of Israel are also delighted with David, and they credit him with killing tens of thousands, but Saul only with killing thousands. Saul's been lazy in his massacring people and only killing thousands of people, and Saul is not happy about this one bit. It seems this is a great source of shame for Saul, and it starts to build some resentment for David. This resentment builds to the extent that Saul even gets hold of a spear at one point. This is during one of his periods where the evil spirit is upon him, and throws it at David, seemingly trying to kill him. It says David dodges, so he's fine, but then nothing more is said about it, and it goes on in a sort of sense that David doesn't seem to be in any way suspicious that maybe there's something wrong with this guy. He just threw a spear at me, and it's at the very least you'd at least smack him around the head with it and make him realise that this is not okay. Saul anyway then offers his daughter to David. It's seemingly in order to make him some sort of target to the Philistines, because then he'll be the son-in-law of the king and therefore a bit of a target. But he's the guy who killed Goliath and is credited by the people as killing tens of thousands, so you think he's probably already a target, so that doesn't really make a great deal of sense. David says no anyway because he's too humble, and then he's offered a second daughter and he's persuaded to accept. There was, however, a price to be paid for this, because Saul, strange man, wanted 100 Philistine foreskins in order for David to be allowed to marry his daughter. David, in some classy fashion I suppose, goes and gets 200 foreskins. It's glad there's no movie about that. It's just a bit weird, but he comes back and then marries Saul's daughter. But either way, for David, he's held to be very successful, very popular, and all is fine and groovy for now. But yeah, so that's the story of David and Goliath. There's a lot more to it than I recall, but it's very good. I mean, it's mad. It sounds a bit made up, doesn't it? Some of that detail certainly sounds a little bit kind of odd. But this problem with David and Saul is going to be a bit of a theme going forward, so we'll see in the next video what happens there.